Good evening, everyone. This is Charles with the Exodus Logistics Learning Center, America's #1 dispatcher and freight broker training. Doing some free training tonight. Free training Q&A, free training, free. Did I say free? Did I forget to say free? It's free. So come on in, ask your questions. Ask your questions. Okay, free training. How's everybody doing? Free. It is Sunday, 6:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, um, the 13th of July. Okay, so dispatcher 101 training for beginners. Share my screen. You can see that tab there showing you the portal and the home page of our trainings. So, what kind of questions you have? I have a little time to spend with you. Hey, Mickey Shea, long time. What in the world? How are you? How are you? How the heck are you? How are things? Hopefully, you're doing well in your health, spirits, everything in life. You're looking to get back into dispatching. Okay, that's fine. You were a student with us. I am. If I was a betting man, I would say yes because I recognize the name. So, okay. Do you did you have a carrier when you were dispatching 2021? Oh yeah, I kind of figured it was. So that's wow. That's 4 years ago. That was a that COVID year. That COVID or coming out of COVID because COVID was 2019, 2020, and 2021. So yeah, that was a minute. Yeah. Did you have a carrier back then? Did you have a truck driver that you would? And if so, what equipment type was that carrier? What equipment type was that carrier that you had? And what did you? It's 2024 now. I mean 2025. I'm sorry, and um, there are different things that's happened and changed. That's going on in the industry, but namely the tariffs. Tariffs are slowing us down, but um, other than that, there's still. I mean, there's still trucks out here on the road, right? This is still a volatile industry. So yes, uh, I can never move them drive-in. So you had, oh, okay. How many did you have? You said move them, so it sounds like more than one. The rates were so low. What area? What area in the country was your drive-in in? And were they willing to go over the road and relocate? At least driving to an area. They were in the south. Wow, that's interesting. The southeast. That's really interesting. Why would you not have a um, easy time getting loads for a drive-in the southeast when that's the region to matter of fact let me show you um, let's go to trend lines and see uh, let's see what's going on with the drive-ins. Let's do some free training right here, right? This is a freight and analytics snapshot from DAT. God, for those who don't know, DAT is an acronym that stands for dial a truck, right? And um, trend lines is a tool that we use to get analytics. So Mickey Shea said Southeast. So let's see the drive-in national rates. Okay, let's take a look at that quick and see what's going on. So the Southeast region of the country, right? 209 a mile, right? Southeast region is right here, right? You figure Virginia, North, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and the states there, Tennessee, you know. So yeah, These are the states right here. And so now this is today. This is today. So back in 2021, I can only imagine it being, if I was a betting man, being higher, right? But was your carrier or carriers, were they willing to go over the road to different areas? Because if you notice, as always, it seems the Midwest region or Midwest zone always seems to be the number one zone, regardless of a drive-in, flatbed, or reefer, uh, that pays well, right? 211. So, yeah. Now, and then knowing what you know now, Mika Shay, um, would you dispatch a drive-in now, or would you dispatch um, a reefer or a flatbed, right? I would still stick with the three major equipment types because again, they're out here on the roads the most. You can get freight for them the easiest, and they pay the better rates, as opposed to the box trucks, hot shot, sprinter vans, cargo vans. So you want to do intermodal. Uh oh. So do you know what that is? Right? You understand the concept of intermodal when you go from one mode of transportation into another mode of transportation, going from containers coming in on a vessel, a steamship line, getting offloaded at a port. That's just one method. That's just one mode that the shipments can come into the country. You have air, you have rail, you have ocean, you have trucks and pipeline, right? So the most common intermodal process is um, right, the ports, right? Trains, ports, cross docks, right? You got it. You got it. So then you will, I'm assuming you'll get a power only carrier who has the driver has a TWIC card, the trucking company has a SCAC code, and they are registered with the UIIA in order to access the ports, right? To get and have a chassis to get a container from a steamship line that they are registered with or set up with. Usually it's all of them at that particular port. What port do you look to work out of mainly? I'm assuming are you in the Georgia area, the Atlanta area, like Savannah or Charleston or Norfolk or Jacksonville? Because you mentioned the Southeast. So there's a few ports down there in the Southeast region. I'm in one near Norfolk, Virginia, Port of Norfolk. Then you got um, North Carolina, I think it's Wilmington, and then you got South Carolina, which is Charleston. Then you got Georgia, which is Savannah. You have Florida, which is Jacksonville, Port of Miami, Port of Manatee, all the way down the eastern seaboard. And if you go north, there's other ports: Baltimore, New York, New Jersey, Boston, all the way up the line, right? So Savannah and Houston. So what you're doing then, Memphis and Chicago. Okay, so you're all over. So are you going to work all four of those? Savannah, Houston, Memphis, and Chicago. So that means you're saying Savannah, right? Savannah, Georgia, Houston, which is down right here, Savannah and Houston. And then you said Memphis, Tennessee, and then you said Chicago up here by the Great Lakes. So you're going to be a busy bee. So I think it'll be easier for you to stay near the bigger port areas like the Savannahs because ships can get in there easily right here. And then the Houston one, get in right here, you see, as opposed to the Memphis trying to get in through some tributaries to get into that area. And in Chicago, you got to come around into the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan. So when are you looking to get started with that? Trains, ports, and cross docks. Yeah. ASAP. So are you not are you, but do you have a carrier in mind? A power only owner operator in mind for this? Have you been talking to men and women? Not yet. Okay, so you work. So that's your first step then to work on getting a power only carrier who's willing for you to help them with intermodal. So unless there's a one-man team or a small fleet that have several power units that can go into the ports at the same time, and you can dispatch for them. So, do you have any experience doing that process, that intermodal process? Any experience? Because you would need to know there are certain things about the ports you're going to know, because every port, there is no uniformity when it comes to the ports and how they operate, because every ports don't have the same. Now they have some of them are a lot of them have common steamship lines, but not every port has all the same steamship lines. Some of them don't operate all with Maersk. Some of them don't operate all with OOCL or Hapag-Lloyd, or all these different steamship lines, right? So if you let's go to Google real quick, put this up, and top 10 steamship lines, right? The largest steamship lines. So here we go. Let's list them. If we're getting into intermodal, right? So, and this is probably based off of the TEUs that they have, the number of 20-foot equivalent units, or the containers, that's what they call them, right? The largest container shipping companies based on fleet size and capacity. That's right. So, and here we go here too. I need to print this out and have it for everybody to have downloaded, share it, save it, share it. So, but so you're not the actually billing part. I definitely need to understand the charges, such as round trip. Yeah, so you have to. And I have a student who's very good. She's become very, very versed in it now, because you got dredge, you got not dredge, but you have detention, you have pre-pull, you have chassis, you have all these different charges you have to incorporate into your quote, your rate, right? You have to understand that, and that varies from port to port, right? So that's the dynamic that you would have to understand, right? But the top 10 steamship lines, right? MSC, which is Mediterranean Shipping Company, based out of Switzerland, the world's largest container ship. So they're taking over Maersk. Maersk is a Danish company, which is Maersk is a global leader in container shipping and logistics. CMA CGM, that's French. We have one based here in Norfolk on USAA Drive, for those who are familiar with the Norfolk area, Norfolk, Virginia. So that's, and then Costco Shipping, Hapag-Lloyd, ONE, which is Ocean Network One, Ocean Network Express, Evergreen Marine, Hyundai Merchant Marine, Yang Ming Marine Transport, and Zim Integrated Shipping Services. So these are all foreign companies. If you notice, none of them are American, the steamship lines. You notice that? None of them are American. You got Swiss, Danish, French, Chinese, German, Japanese, Taiwanese, South Korean, Taiwanese again, two of them from Taiwan that's in the top 10. That's Evergreen and Yang Ming Marine Transport, and then Israeli. So where is the American? And then it lists the list of largest container shipping companies. And now we have this stat. You see? Yes, we are a consumer. We used to be a producer, but now we are consumers. So we've flipped the script, if you will, and it's affected the economy. We don't produce anything anymore. We just consume, like we're just fat, greedy consumers, right? We don't produce anything and affect our GDP, our gross domestic product, and our economy, right? We're too busy purchasing things from other people, and that's what the Trump administration was talking about. The Trump administration, that's what he's dealing with these tariff things, because he's tired of being overcharged for exporting our goods into foreign countries, and then foreign countries is not being taxed like they should by importing their goods into our country. So that's the whole thing with the tariff war. from a bottom line. So American is a consumer. We are no longer a leading producer of goods and services. We consume things, right? And it look, all these headquarters. I don't see nothing on here American as far as, look at this. And this is the top 30. Look down at the bottom. 28 out of 30, company called Matson, right? And they're in Hawaii. The headquarters in Honolulu, Hawaii, founded in 1882. But they're like third to the last in the top 30 steamship lines for goods on containers, right? So that's amazing. That's amazing. So, but yeah, so you would need to know these stats, not like study them, like you're in grade school, but uh, understand why steamship lines are what they are, why they rank so high, what the number of TEUs, the number of ships. See, so MSC, which is in Switzerland, has 6,408,597 TEUs or containers. TEU stands for, and it's up here, 20-foot equivalent, the largest 20-foot equivalent TEUs capacity for the fleet. Those are the containers, the actual containers, the TEUs, right? And then the number of ships that MSC has is 889. So they take up 20.2% of the market share. Look at that. 20.2%. That's 1/5 of the market share is for MSC, Mediterranean Shipping Company. So that's a good stat to know. So if you're going to be in a certain sector of an industry like transportation, logistics, shipping, intermodal, things like that, it'll be a good idea to start the process of educating yourself on that industry. Does that make sense? Just educating yourself on that industry. So, but there are the stats. Some amazing stats. So the US, which is 28, is a staggering 0.2% of the market share. They're not even making a dent. Not making a dent. So, but that's fine. If you're going to get into intermodal and drayage, just understand who the larger players are and try to get your carrier, your power only carrier, connected with the larger steamship lines so that they can increase their likelihood of getting containers from those steamship lines. You can best believe that MSC steamship line they're probably touching every port in the United States. I can't imagine them not having a ship. If they got 889 ships, I can imagine them not having at least 10 to 20 of them at each port that's in the United States. So the question becomes, well, what are the ports in the United States? Right? So let's go there. Share that task, go to Google. US ports. Right, US ports. Let's see, US ports, United States ports. Okay, here we go. Here's a map. The list of ports in the United States. Right, and there's a map here, but I want to do a because that's another thing you need to know. So here we go. Here's a graphical table chart representation of the ports. So again, Mikeshe, if you're still on here, do you not also think that this would be important to know? Which ports, what are the ports in the United States relative to where you're going to be working out of, and also relative to there's 50 of them, top 50, the number of trades they do, right? Total trading, right? Port of Houston is large. Look at that, 275,940,289. So they're trading goods and services out of that port in Texas, Port of Houston in Texas, that number of times. They're doing it domestically 79 million times, and then they're doing foreign trades 196 million. So you add them up, it's 275. That's where you get the numbers from. They're foreign imports and foreign exports. These are the numbers, right? So again, it's good to educate yourself, right, with that information. If you want to, and this is high level, you'll get more specific and more granular as you get more into the meat of doing ports and intermodal. But at least you want to understand the ports and who you're dealing with, right? So you mentioned Savannah, Houston, Chicago, and Memphis, right? So let's see. Where we go. Savannah, Houston. We got Houston right there. That's the biggest one of volume, right? So Savannah, Houston. I am in Port of Hampton Roads, Virginia, which is right here, Port of Hampton Roads. So we do a fairly decent amount. We're in the top 10, so that's not bad. You got the Port of Los Angeles, Baton Rouge, Long Beach, New Orleans, Port of Jersey, New York, Corpus Christi, Texas, Louisiana, Houston. So Port of Mobile, Alabama, Louisiana, Port of Savannah. That's the one. That's the one you mentioned, Savannah. So we got Texas, Port Arthur, Freeport. You got some in Ohio, Mid Ohio Valley Port, Port of Baltimore, Maryland. That's near me. Cincinnati, Kentucky. East Illinois. So this is probably the Chicago. East Illinois, Port of St. Louis, and East Illinois. So that's probably the Chicago area. And you did mention Memphis, but I'm not sure that I see one for Memphis, like Tennessee. That's inland, so I'm not sure about that one. But yeah, but these are important. These are extremely important to have and to understand. So here's Illinois again. Illinois, Missouri, Illinois. So these are waterway ports. So it's like tributaries to get into there. So they count, but they're not doing as much volume as the others, right? Port of Pittsburgh, Port of Jacksonville, Florida Everglades. There should be one Manatee in Florida too. Let me see. Port Everglades, Port Tampa Bay. So let's see what the other Florida. I'm sure there's another one in Florida. Okay. Well, all right. So, so you're dealing with rail now. You mentioned rail. So Union Pacific. So now you're dealing with the rail line. So you got Norfolk Southern, Union Pacific, BNSF, which is the Burlington Northern Santa Fe United, CSX rail line. So when you're doing intermodal, are you incorporating a rail component with the like the rail yard with the port for the truck side with the chassis, or are you only doing one component of it, just the chassis with the truck from the steamship line, or are you doing the chassis from the rail onto the rail cars? So that's a question you would have to ask yourself as well. You see, so and these are different dynamics. Now you got to be, you definitely have to understand the components. So now there's another one. Let's open up another Google window and go there, right? Rail lines map in the United States, right? So, National Rail Line map. And let's see what we get. Okay. So look at the different color coded. And I'm going to blow this up, but I just want to show you the different components, right? You got Amtrak, because you got Canadian, Mexico, CN and CX. You got Norfolk Southern, Canadian National, Union Pacific, BNSF. So these are all the rail lines. If I can blow this up and get it to, let's remove this legend here and blow it up a little bit more. Now, look at all these components. And it's going to come in clearly in a second. But yeah, so you got to be, uh, you got to understand. Are you you're doing it from the ports and then taking a rail line into in further inland where the ocean line doesn't come, and then doing it rail line. So the rail cars travel at about 200 miles an hour. There's no traffic like with the trucking side. You get a container, you put it on a chassis, you got to take it with a truck and get it somewhere. But with the rail line, it gets there faster. It's just the components. You got to go from rail yard to rail yard, and then you still have to dray it from the destination rail yard to the last mile destination with a truck with a chassis. But it got there faster, so you have to understand how you're going to do that component. So we got different components in a so one shipment can go through several intermodal processes from getting to from China to the US on an ocean line or an air line like airplane air cargo, getting to its airport or ocean port, and then either on a rail yard or a dray chassis on a truck brought inland to its last mile destination uh, customer. So that is the drayage or the intermodal process. So I wish you good luck with it, but yeah, you would need to know that process and how it operates. Okay, and the different lines and everything. So Norfolk Southern, other rail lines, you would have to understand the legend, read that, get those points across. See, you got KCX. I forgot about KCX, which is the Midwest component going through Kansas City, KCX. And then all the way down, that line goes all the way down towards Mexico. So if we open up the legend right here, Canada Pacific KCX. So it goes from Canada down through Kansas City. If you go up into Canada, right, into one of the um, provinces of Canada, right? You got Minnesota. Now you're going into the province of Canada, Winnipeg. That's Canada. That's CN. That's a Canadian line. So Union Pacific is blue. Let's go back to Union Pacific, right? So you have to understand these things, right? There's blue, Union Pacific. Union Pacific is mostly on the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern are usually on mostly on the East Coast to the Midwest. Um, CSX, Norfolk Southern. I'm sorry, Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern are usually on the East Coast. CSX and BNSF usually are on the West Coast side of the country. Okay, and then they have midpoint connectors and hubs like in Chicago, Kansas City that go into destinations that they can't get to because one rail line doesn't go from one side of the country to the other side of the country. There are connectors that they have to go by. Okay. When they were designing the rail lines back in the gold rush era, back in the 1800s and things like that, 17, 1800s, that's just how it was. So, but yeah, um, okay, you opened up a can of worms with the intermodal. I want to do intermodal. Well, here you go. Welcome to intermodal. Here you go. You got the, let's go back to the beginning of it. We move trend lines. Let's go back to the containers, the steamship lines that brings in the containers on the ocean containers. Let's go to the ports, be able to recognize and understand all the ports that we deal with, right? And then you want to introduce a rail component, then the rail lines component all across the United States. Look at that. So you would have to have, if I were you, a map of this, right? So that you can understand if you're going to do the rail component, then you want to know where you sending your where you sending your driver, your drayman, your dredge driver to go pick up to a rail yard to go pick up a container with a chassis from the rail line and put it on their chassis to go deliver to the last mile destination. Because once it gets to a destination, um, hub, it has to be drayed, last mile drayed to the destination, to the distributor or the customer, either by a chassis on the trailer or on a rail train, right? But the train can't take it to the last mile destination. It can just go from origin rail port to destination rail port, and then it still has to be offloaded. That container still has to be offloaded into a chassis on a truck and shipped or drayed to that last mile destination for delivery. So you have to understand that in the process of intermodal. And in intermodal, remember UIIA, let's share that tab. UIIA, you would have to understand, that process. And a company called IANA, which is the Intermodal Association of North America, talks about intermodal. So familiarize yourself with this website here. If you really are serious about getting into intermodal, like you're showing the rail line, you got rail line. Look at the containers on the rail line. This is a flat well. It's a whale cart. These two containers are stacked side by side or next to each other. Sometimes they're double stacked. And now you have intermodal here. Look at this. That's being trucked to its destination. That container is on a chassis and it's being trucked to its destination. So, and then here are all these containers on a steamship line. So that's welcome to intermodal. That's being transported from where it originated from to where it's destined to. Okay. So if you want to get into the world of intermodal, that segment, that component of transportation and logistics, figuring out what gets where and how it gets there, what mode of transportation. So logistics involve not just the transportation piece, but figuring out what's the best route to take and how it's done and things like that. That's the logistical piece. The transportation is just a small segment of that, how it's going to get transported, whether it's ocean, whether it's rail, whether it's truck, right? So you would, even talking that, you would have to understand. And then with UIIA, I would get familiar with this website, the IANA website, which is the International Association of North America. I'm sorry, Intermodal Association of North America. You would need to get, I'm going to put this in the chat so you can have that. Okay. So, yeah. So do your homework, right? Do your homework. UIIA participation. Look at all this. 95% of the North American equipment interchanges are managed under the UIIA. Intermodal trucking companies participate in the UIIA. That's the trucking piece, not the rail piece. So you have intermodal trucking, you have intermodal rail, right? Because they're different modes of transportation. So, man, why'd you started something, McKay Shea, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So, and then the UIIA is the agreement that needs to be made between the trucking company getting access to the port, right? And what does the UIIA stand for is right here. Okay. It is the Uniform Intermodal Interchange and Facilities Access Agreement. So the part that says and facilities access is not in the UIIA, but it's makes up the definition though. So it is the Uniform Intermodal Interchange and Facilities Access Agreement. So you have to be able to access a facility to be able to do an intermodal interchange. And that is an agreement for that. That is the governing body. So hopefully you understand that, right? It is an agreement that allows trucking companies to access a facility, the ports or the rail yards, whatever, in an intermodal interchange process done uniformly. Okay. If you break it down like that, right? That's the UIIA. So your company needs to have UIIA. So the company has to have a UIIA. They need to have a SCAC code, and a driver that accesses the port or the rail yards. They have to have TWIC, Transportation Worker Identification Credential. Okay, Transportation Worker Identification Credential. That's what that needs to be. Right. So did we break that down for you, or for and everybody else? We went from uh, the ports, went from the steamship lines, the top 30 steamship lines. We went from the different ports, the name of the ports, the top 30 ports. We went to the rail yards, the rail mapping. We went to UIIA, right? And this is for not only McKee Shea, but also anyone else that is interested in the intermodal component. Yes, Shivani Mack. Yes, Shivani, I think you are a former student too, or maybe a current student. So yeah, so here's another I guess gem, if you will. Um, let's open up another tab, Google, and define for you SCAC, because that is it's a SCAC code, right? Standard Carrier Alpha Code, and that's issued by the National Motor Freight Traffic Association, NMF. That's how you get a SCAC. You have to go to the NMFTA website and apply for it. Okay, it even says it right here. Get the SCAC code from that website. Standard Carrier Alpha Code, right? And it's in order to access the port, the carrier, the owner operator, has to they have to be under the UIIA agreement, letting the facility needs to know that you have an access agreement to be able to access the port. Your company has to have a SCAC code to identify your company, which is this right here, SCAC code, unique 2 to 4 letter code to use to identify, here we go, I just said it, identify transportation companies, primarily in the freight and logistics industry. And to do that, you have to go to the website, the NMFTA's website, and apply for the SCAC code. That code represents one company. Let's say you're a carrier, you have multiple assets. You have 10 power units coming to the ports for your one company, right? Your SCAC code covers all 10. You're under that one SCAC code, right? So, and do you need SCAC and TWIC to get on military? It would be helpful to have a SCAC and TWIC for the military bases. Most military bases will allow to have what's called a military pass, a rapid gate pass, which is almost like a SCAC code and TWIC, but it does it for you. To get a rapid gate pass, you have to go through all these checks and balances, background checks. Once you pass that, you'll get a rapid gate pass. You show that to the security people at the military to get in the base. They see that rapid gate pass. I mean, you've cleared everything to be eligible to get on the base. If you got a rapid gate pass, you've checked all the boxes. So, that was informative. Not a student yet. Will be joining soon, or is it too late due to classes already started? No, it's never too late, Shivani Mac, because it's a self-paced course. You can join anytime. The time you log into the back office, your 90 days starts. Everybody's 90 days is different from everyone else's once you start. And it starts as soon as you log in. Okay. So that's the SCAC code. So let's circle back a little bit. If you're going to participate in the intermodal process, right? Mikai Shea brought this up, right? So if you're going to participate in the intermodal process, you need to have a UIIA agreement to be able to access the facilities that you're going to, the ports that you're going to, and connect with the steamship lines that you're going to be connecting with at those ports. Typically, when you do a UIIA agreement, you are applying for all the steamship lines at that port. So you'll be able to pick up a container from somebody. It would not be wise for you or your company to do a UIIA and leave out one of the steamship lines that delivers containers to that port, then you're doing yourself and your company a disservice. Because let's say you only applied for the UIIA, you got approved, but you only applied, there were 20 steamship lines coming to that particular port, but you only applied for 10. And then you're limiting yourself by 50% because you only can get containers from half the steamship lines at the ports. Does that make sense? Right? So that's that. So you need a UIIA agreement to access the port. Your company needs to be identified for transportation on that port, which is the SCAC code, right? And then whatever driver that's going to access that port needs to have what's called a TWIC card. TWIC card, okay? Transportation Worker Identification Credential. So we're breaking this down very thoroughly. Everything that you would need and your company would need, and the driver of that truck for your company or someone who's leased onto your authority, whoever is driving that truck onto that port to get a container and load it on their chassis needs to show that along with their paperwork to be able to get on the port. They're going to show that. They're going to identify their SCAC. The SCAC's going to look them up and say, okay, you have a UIIA with us. Your SCAC identifies the company with the UIIA. Here's the TWIC card of the driver. You can go ahead and get in. You're going to do what's called, and that process is called in-gating. When you go to the port to get in, to access a container and put it on a chassis, that's an in-gating process. Okay? So, TWIC card, Transportation Worker Identification Credential. Card is a credential issued by and this is another governing body. So you get the TWIC card from the TSA, Transportation Security Administration, to maritime workers for unescorted access to secure areas of maritime facilities and vessels. So you can go around there unescorted with a TWIC card, right? It's essentially a background check and a security assessment to ensure individuals accessing these areas are not a security threat. So, because the TSA gives you a TWIC card and an STA credential. STA is Security Threat Assessment. So when you are applying for your TWIC card through the Transportation Security Administration, you are going through a security threat assessment process to be able to access the ports unescorted to get to your destination to pick up a container to be loaded on the chassis. So I ask again, Mikeshe, are you prepared to go through this process? Are you ready to go through this process? It's a lot, but it can be done. You just need to know the steps. Once you know the steps and the governing body, so the TWIC card for the driver of the truck is TSA. The SCAC code is the NMFTA, the National Motor Freight Traffic Association, issues the SCAC. And then the UIIA is issued through IANA, which is the Intermodal Association of North America. So you have to be familiar with that. You have to be familiar with that. You have to be familiar with that, right? Intermodal, intermodal, intermodal. What are the steps? What's the hierarchy? Who are the governing bodies that controls that? What are the ports? What are the rail lines for the trains? What are the ports for the ocean ports? Who are the largest steamship lines to bring the containers into the country, importing, right? Because intermodal deals with import and export, right? When you bring goods into this country, you are issued what's called a duty or a tariff, which is tax on imports. You're exporting goods out of the country, importing and exporting, right? That is an intermodal process because you're either having goods come in or you're shipping goods out of the country. So that process goes through different modes of transportation. Okay? So this free training tonight was all about, apparently, intermodal component. So, Mikeshe, hopefully this helped. Hopefully this gave you a breakdown, a little bit more of a breakdown. And for those who came in a little late, we went from the when they mentioned intermodal, we said, okay, well, what's the largest container shipping companies? Okay, we gave a list right here. Okay, what's the most popular ports? Okay, we gave us a list right here. Right, all these ports, the top 50. Right. Okay, well, let's do the rail component. Let's do the rail yard component. Okay, well, here's the rail segment, and you can blow it up and expand and contract it as much as possible. Okay, know how I access the port. What's the process of accessing the port? Okay, well, the first process is you have to have an agreement to be able to access that facility. The Uniform Intermodal Interchange and Facilities Access Agreement, the UIIA, gets you in. Okay, how will my company be identified? Okay, it will be identified by your SCAC code, right? Which is issued by the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. And then the driver, what do they need? They need to have a unescorted security access issued by the Transportation Security Administration, which is the TSA. Okay. So going back to the SCAC, let's open up another Google and go to that website that issues that SCAC, right? The NMFTA website and the SCAC code, right? The National Motor Freight, right here, National Motor Freight Traffic Association. So, and I'll put this, a copy of this in the chat. So hopefully, is this making sense, guys? Am I breaking it down like how it should be broken down to you so you can understand? All you got to do now is just go here and get the information and then apply accordingly, right? But it's there. Okay. We've been up here 47 minutes. That's great. Any final questions? We good? We can go ahead and get off and get started. All right, free training today. Didn't cost a dime, right? This is for you guys are YouTube subscribers. So hopefully you guys, some of you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Some of you used to be members of the trainings. Others have never been to training but subscribe to the YouTube channels. Maybe you'll consider it. This is the type of training you get in the portal, right? And more. This is only a microcosm of what you receive in the Dispatcher 101 training for beginners. We also have a Freight Broker 101 training for beginners. Coincidentally, right now to the end of the month, we're having $100 off or 25% off for the training, the 90-day self-paced training, 25% off or what's equal to $100. So even more savings, right? That's just a plug. I'm not trying to convince anyone to join. That's just what we're having right now going on. Okay. So where's that at? Let's go to that tab and go to the top, show you that. $25% off right there. Bing. That's our training. And I'll put the in there. And there we go. So while I'm doing that, hopefully, are there any questions? Any final questions before we get off? All right. So these numbers here they reflect the 25% already incorporated into that. That's because it used to be $3.99, but now it's $2.99 because it's 25% off. This used to be $5.99, but now it's $4.49 because it already right here, it says it right here, already marked off. The 25% has already been marked off. So there's no promo code or anything like that. Right? Just so you know. Okay. And then what's included in that is when you go to that link, just read what's included so you'll be aware of what you're getting. So before you purchase any service, you may want to be aware of what you are getting, right? That way you don't there's no surprises, so to speak. Okay. So there we go. All right, guys. I think that's it. I think we've done enough damage tonight. Hopefully, you guys got enough information. This is strictly we mainly broke down intermodal. We started off with some Q&A, but we just went straight into intermodal. So, okay. All right. If there's aren't any more questions, for those of you who haven't joined, I look forward to that. And then for those of you who are still students with us and in our portal, thank you for your dedication and commitment. All right. And I appreciate you. Have a good evening.